All right, we are live now. Today we're going to talk about Bernie Madoff, and the reason, obviously, a lot of you guys know why I chose Bernie Madoff today was obviously he passed away in prison. And if a lot of you guys remember back in 2008 during the financial crisis, 2009, that was when Bernie Madoff and the Ponzi scheme came really big news. And I know there was a lot of outrage around it. And, quite frankly, there was a lot of outrage around it. But quite frankly, a lot of this stuff goes on in Wall Street. So it was kind of like he was picked as the example that they wanted to, put him in prison. And I think they sentenced him to like 180 years in prison or something like that. But when we look at his chart, I was just going to do what we're going to do. We're going to look at the chart a little bit, but then we're going to really see when we look at his chart that he kind of had a path. He had a choice in life. He had a choice of whether he was going to go down this really dharmic path that he had, and then he had a choice of whether he was going to go down this Ponzi scheme path. And that the chart will really show this. Two things I'm going to be interested in looking at this chart. We're going to look at like what kind of planets were being activated when he actually went to prison back in 2009. And then we're going to look at what kind of planets were involved with Bernie Madoff passing away. So let's just take a look at his chart really fast here. Let us see. Okay, so you guys can see, you guys can probably see my cursor on the screen here. But we obviously see he's a Leo ascendant, which is, he was such a big name. The thing about Leos is that they do have a karmic, imperative to receive a lot more attention than, everyday people receive. And so there's a lot of people that get jealous with that. But the thing about a Leo is it can be infamous, or you're really well famous and you're very well liked, but you're receiving attention and publicity nonetheless. All right, let's take a look at that again. And let's see. I'm just going to go to brushes here, guys. But this is kind of where, so, we got the first house here. And then what I was really thinking about was his first lord, the ruler of his chart, the sun over here. It was, it's in the 9th house of Aries, which, it's exalted in there. And if you guys know, the 9th house is a Dharma house. It's the house of religion, of the highest teachings, of gurus and teachers. And, not only would this say that he was probably raised, because the moon is also there in the 9th house with his son. His mother and father, I looked at the bio and I couldn't find much information on if they were very religious or not. But I think that he was raised in a somewhat good family. His mother and father taught him a lot of principles on being honest and good. And that's why I see like this fork in the road that Bernie Madoff had. And so, of course, guys, you also see the moon there, and that's in the 9th house. And we got Mercury here, a lot of teachings, a lot of thinking about dharmic things. So we have the 9th house, and then we have this huge contrast right here with the 10th house, if you guys notice. I'm going to clean up a little bit of this. And so that's where I feel like Bernie Madoff, he had this choice between kind of going like down this 9th house path where he could have literally become like a priest or a teacher of some sort. Maybe he wouldn't have made a lot of money though. Maybe he would have just been like a teacher and been a pretty well-liked good guy. And but he chose that 10th house path. path, and we'll show you why that 10th house path that Bernie went down was kind of the path of destruction. But, we don't really judge things that much in astrology or the Vedic teachings. There's not really, sorry, I got to turn this on. We don't judge this stuff very much. It's like you're looking at it like neutral. One example of the neutral aspect of things I wanted to bring up was, I got this coin right here, guys, is if you think about something like the 6th house. On one end, you got police and doctors on this side of the coin, okay? And then 6th house also represents criminals, drug dealers, all types of things. And it's the same house that represents all those things. And it's like the 6th house could represent you're a doctor or you become a really well-known criminal. I just bring that point up to know that there's a lot of neutrality when looking at this stuff. We won't go into the marriage house as much at all. But anyways, you see right here, we got Mars there in the 10th house. We got Venus there. And then we got Ketu there in the 10th house. So you notice like almost all the energy, most of the energy of this entire chart is in those 2, the 9th and the 10th house. Now this is the deal. So you guys remember that, we'll go back. You guys remember K2 shows like your past life tendencies, the things that you're actually like an expert at. So K2 would show that in past lives, and K2 being in the 10th house in Bernie Madoff's chart, and it's with Venus there, and it's with Mars. It shows that in past lives, Bernie Madoff was a very successful businessman. He knew how to use Mars energy, which is your willpower, your determination, and those things to get what he wanted. So K2 with Mars, he got what he wanted. Then K2 with Venus, he knew how to negotiate contracts. So all this stuff where he developed this Ponzi scheme, it all came very natural to him in his chart. And remember, the chart is just a karmic snapshot of the type of person you are. All this stuff came very natural. Now here's the deal though. And we'll take a look. The thing about, remember guys, the thing about K2 here is this is your past life. This is not what you really want to focus on in this current life. What you want to focus on is this thing right here, Rahu there in the 4th. Okay. And as a little quick fact, the deceit yoga that I had posted on the thumbnail is if there's a malefic in the 4th house, it can cause somebody to basically be deceitful. Of course, you got your free will, but it can give them that karmic tendency to be a deceitful person. So we have K2 in the 10th and Rahu in the 4th. And a lot of times people think 4th house is all about just the house. It is about your home, your house environment, your community, your early schooling when you were a child. All that kind of stuff is 4th house stuff. But 4th house is also it's a dharmic house in that it's the first house of really meditation. Because the 4th house is the heart center. The 4th house is all about your heart center and your that spiritual heart that everyone has. And it's the first house that really represents meditation in a chart. It's not like that deep level meditation that maybe you get in like in the 8th house or the 12th house. But the 4th house is like you're finally stabilizing your emotions and you're finally learning how to do some basic meditation. So that's really what Bernie's path, I feel like his chart is somewhat of a tragedy. But if we're judging this neutrally, it's not a tragedy because with all this stuff that he did, he was burning off a lot of karma. So he had this Ponzi scheme, then, it came falling down, the Ponzi scheme, and he ended up spending the last 12, 15 years in prison, and he ended his life there. All right. So the K2 thing right there means that, K2 was going to basically take that stuff away. So K2's job was that he's going to take away all this money, and Venus is the karaka of money. So Bernie went into his past life tendencies of using his willpower, using his skill, his business acumen, and knowing how to make deals, kind of like Donald Trump, And then K2 went ahead and just did the big beheading, because that was not where he was meant to be in this life. And it was almost like the universe did a giant big auto correction on him. And your universe will do whatever it needs to do to get somebody's attention. So if his life is that he needs to be in an ashram meditating, well, okay, the universe physically restrains him and puts him into incarceration. And that's kind of what the universe ended up doing. Because maybe it was just he was too much on the wrong path and he wasn't learning. He wasn't learning at what he needed to learn here. And so the universe did a big cosmic 2x4 at him. Okay, so we're going to look into the circumstances of why he ended up in prison. And actually, let's transition back. I actually went to the wrong doodle chart here. All right. So the circumstances, him going to prison, guys, and we're going to... Oops. So he went to prison. He was sentenced on June 29th, 2009, which would be, let's see, June 29, 2009, which would have put him in, let's see, June 29th. Sorry, he pleaded guilty during this. Oops, let's go to this. So he pleaded guilty during this K2 period right here. So anyways, he pleaded guilty when he was in K2, okay? And I've seen K2 when I've seen charts where people end up going to prison. A lot of times, okay, like we've been all taught in astrology that prison is always represented by the 12th house. Because it's like a long-term, like you're isolated from society and so forth. But when I've been studying charts of these serial killers or these people that end up getting sentenced to prison, a lot of times, most times I see K2 involved. So Bernie Madoff was in that K2 period where this big hierarchy Ponzi scheme, 10th house, was being taken down by K2. And then he was literally pleaded guilty. And then he entered a Venus period shortly after, and we'll go to what happened there. Right after the K2 period, he entered Venus over here, the Venus period. But, I mean, these are kind of like K2 and Venus are going to be acting somewhat similar since Venus is K2's lord. So, and then when he's in the Venus period, he ends up actually he pleads guilty in K2, then in Venus, he's actually physically incarcerated. So, I mean, this is just like really, really crazy stuff to read. But it's ironic. It's really weird because when I've studied a lot of charts, this whole 12th house prison thing, I haven't seen it a lot. A lot of times 12th house means like foreign residence or traveling abroad, living abroad, something like that. Something foreign countries, things like that. I mean, of course, 12th house could mean prison, but I've seen a lot of this K2 being involved. And remember, guys, I had the story about my own K2 story, and just K2 just throws you huge, again, cosmic 2x4s to mess up your life for sure. All right. So the next thing I wanted to look at was we were going to look at what dasha he was in when he actually passed away. And you guys remember yesterday we looked at Prince Philip's chart, and we found out that the 2nd house lord and the 7th house lord, 7th house lord is traditionally the planet that, is a death-causing house where you might die during that period if it's your time to die. It's kind of like it's your soul's way that it can pull the ripcord and bail out. So let me see if I can get that doodle up there. Here we go. So this was more currently. We know he passed away today. Which, you know, even if people think he was such a horrible guy, you know, it's like not great news. I wanted to mention something about that because I saw this headline and it was on one of the news reports. It was Bernie Madoff goes to hell. And I was just laughing like, wow, what a way to sensationalize and make a judgment of this guy that he just went to hell. And the news media is going to be the one to make that judgment. Yeah, right. Okay, so let's look. So we know he was in this, let's see, Saturn Mercury period. And I'm just forgetting what even the date is right now. So anyways, he was in this oops. There we go. And you guys see right there the Saturn Mercury period. And if we look at the chart. So he's in Saturn Mercury. I mean, Saturn period, I mean, for a Leo, it rules the 8th house. Or, I mean, sorry, Saturn rules the 6th house, disease. It's an enemy planet, represents old age. So I'm sure these last few years of his life were quite difficult. And let's go ahead and go back to the, real quick, I'm just going to clean up the chart one more time. All right, let's take a look at that. So remember, he was in a Saturn Mercury period today when he passed away. So you notice that Saturn is, you know, it rules the 6th house. It rules the 7th house. Now, 6th house right here, it does mean problems and so forth, but it's not like you're going to die during 6th house period. Most of the time, it has to do with service. It can do with problems. It can do with crime. It can do with just... 6th house can be your workplace, just a really bad workplace. But obviously he wasn't in the workplace, but he was in a place he didn't like, and so 6th house he probably had some illnesses going on around the time just because of his age and so forth. Really, what we want to look at is the Mercury. So Mercury was right there in his chart, and we know that Mercury is Lord of the 2nd house of Virgo and the 11th house of Gemini there. So again, you know, with Prince Philip, we saw that it was a 2nd house lord that he passed away under, and we see with Bernie Madoff that the 2nd house, Mercury is a death. It's called a Maraca planet for Leos. So Mercury, 2nd house lord, was active in the Bhukti of Mercury that he passed away. And again, like when you start seeing this astrology, you see that the patterns, and this is what kind of proves, it keeps proving the astrology as accurate. That this is an accurate way of reading the energy, because you see these patterns of 7th lord, 2nd lord, and a lot of times there's a death. Now, there are always extenuating circumstances. It doesn't explain everything, because remember what I told you guys, astrology is a model of reality. It's not perfect. It doesn't explain, you know, what flavor of toothpaste you're going to use this morning. So anyways, the 2nd lord was active there. And remember, you know, when the reason why the 2nd house is a house where you can pass away is because it simply means that the karmic script is basically saturated. So on a more karmic level, of a more karmic and universal level, you know, with all this karma that Bernie Madoff was involved in with the Ponzi scheme, and then having this really downfall from grace. He even, I think, said he was ashamed and he felt like his family was dishonored. And I mean, he just got in the media, just tore into him. And then he spends his remaining years in this prison. So, I mean, it kind of to me represents like this karma being burned off, and then there was no more reason for the body to stay, the soul to stay there anymore. The lessons were learned, so then we move on to the next incarnation. even though everybody, everybody in this world, in the cancel culture, the media, we want to wish someone off to hell forever and ever and ever. It doesn't work that way. Anyways, if there's any, oh yeah, Yolanda says, so he paid his karma in this life through most of his life was living the high life. Yeah, karma is very neutral. So you could have the karma to live the high life. You could have the karma to live like Jeff Bezos. And you're just burning off that luxury karma. You're supposed to experience what is it like to have all these 5 sense pleasures of, all types of these different enjoyments and have the money and the freedom to do whatever you want. That's a form of karma, just like going to prison or being abused or something else is a form of karma. Like I said with the coin earlier, it's just all of it's karma. And if you guys read the Bhagavad Gita, this karma, we actually want to get off this whole karmic wheel altogether. Like, we want to not be on the karma wheel at all. We don't want good or bad karma. We just want no karma. We want to get to the point where we're enlightened, the absolute. We join with the absolute, and then we just pass beyond all the 5 sense pleasures and pains, and we move beyond that, and then we're off that reincarnational cycle. You join the absolute and you're done. So, that's what it is. So even if you're having a really good life and you have this quote unquote good karma, which the good karma is a judgment, the ultimate goal is to be enlightened and to get beyond all of it. So guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks so much for watching my channel. If you guys have any comments, please comment down below. Like and subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of content. Also, you can look for information down below on how to receive your own personal reading. So thank you very much, guys.